Hi everyone, so for this month's crystal snippet video, I thought I would talk about how crystals can be broken, they can fall and they can be lost. I was delivering my Crystals for You workshop in the UK last week, and one of my students actually asked me this very question. She said, one of my crystals broke, I dropped it, what does that mean? Does it mean I can't use it anymore? You know, is it no good anymore? And will it bring me bad luck? And I think this is a really popular concern among crystal lovers and crystal users. So I have a variety of crystals in front of me, ones which I have broken myself or they've become broken, which I will talk about in a minute. But first of all, yes, I'd like to just explain that this happens to us all, and usually it happens because the crystal has experienced some kind of change in its environment, so either heat or cold, pressure or some kind of shock by dropping it has then caused the crystal to break. But of course, crystals, as we know, are also very sensitive to energy because they help us to balance our own energy, and they're like little mini hoovers, they soak up energy. So there's two ways of looking at this really. It could just be a purely practical thing that you have accidentally dropped your crystal, or it could be something more energetic with a deeper meaning in it for you. First of all, I'd like to say that no matter what happens, if your crystal has broken, fallen and broken, or you've just found it to be broken, or in fact it's disappeared, then it actually is related to how the crystal was formed in the first place. Being broken doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the crystal itself. It is still a pure, wonderful healing tool. And the reason that it's no different to when the crystal was first formed, if you really think about it, crystals are formed in the core of the earth under immense pressure. Crystals are formed by lots of different minerals and different rocks, being under this immense pressure of molten lava and heat, intense heat, and they create these wonderful, huge rock formations, these huge crystals. Now, what then happens, of course, is people come along and they mine these crystals for us to purchase them. So the miners will literally break off chunks of the crystal off of the mother crystal and have these smaller chunks that they will then sell to retailers, and then that's when we go to the shop and we purchase particular pieces. And some of those pieces will be raw crystal that has been broken off from the mother crystal in the earth, and other pieces have been manufactured, so they have been changed in their form somehow. So tumble stones that we're very used to using, the lovely smooth shiny crystal stones, have been tumbled in a machine. So crystals have already been affected. They have already, in a sense, been broken off from their mother crystal, their origin. So therefore, this really helps for us to see breakages from a different perspective. It's really not a bad thing, and the crystals are used to these physical changes that they go through. Now, of course, we can use the analogy, actually, which is quite interesting, to think in terms of the mother crystal. It's much like a human mother who is growing inside of her in her womb, a baby, and that baby is fed and nourished by the umbilical cord. And of course, when the baby is born and brought into the world, that umbilical cord is cut, it's broken. Does that mean that the baby is no good? Of course not. So it's much the same with the crystals being broken away from their mother rock in the formation of the earth. So don't worry about breakages. However, there is a but, because crystals are also energetic beings, energetic consciousness, and they're mini teachers that help us to heal. So they're very sensitive to energy. So it might be that in fact they have become broken because of a more subtle energy, and maybe something to do within your own energetic field, or an energy transition you are going through in your own life, because crystals can act as mirrors to our lives and ourselves. They are echoes of what we are experiencing in our lives. So sometimes they very intelligently break or disappear for a reason, to give us a sign. And of course, as we all know in this industry, in this holistic well-being world, we need to become really good at noticing our environment, listening and trusting our intuition. And crystals are a conduit for that, a tool if you like. So if your crystal breaks or drops and you feel really affected by it, it really touches you somehow at your heart or your solar plexus or your sacral chakra, you feel really concerned about it and it's really affected you, then to me, that says something different. That says to me that there is an energetic change that is going on within you and the crystal has mirrored that for you. So in that instance, you really need to stand back and witness what has happened and think, how does this relate to my world currently and what is going on for me? And of course, only you can answer that. But the crystal is actually helping you to see with real clarity through the breakage, that sudden thing happening, to see something that you really need to see in your life for your soul's evolution. So have a little think about that. I'm going to talk now about some of my own experiences, bringing some real life analogy into what I'm talking about here. So I have a few crystals here. In fact, I haven't broken that many for the years that I've been a crystal therapist. But probably the most significant is this beautiful piece of Lemurian quartz. Now, years ago, I was married for the first time to my ex-husband, and I remember we went to Dartmouth in the UK, which is a lovely seaside resort, and I visited the Crystal Shop, which is a chain of shops in the UK, and I walked in and my husband was waiting in the car for me, knowing that I spend a bit of time in crystal shops, and I bought this crystal. Now, Lemurian crystals have a wonderful story around them that you may want to research and look up. But I was particularly attracted to the beautiful, very subtle peach or pink blush colour that this quartz has. And also it has horizontal striations, which is quite typical of Lemurian quartz. So I just instinctively bought this piece, but it felt like it was very important to me. Now at this time, my husband and I were going through some real challenges within our relationship. We had young children, but we were also growing apart. So we worked through that and we actually decided to get divorced. And years later, I'm remarried to wonderful second husband. But this crystal broke. It literally snapped in half when I picked it up one day. And this happened when I had divorced from my husband. And I'd moved to a new home and I was setting up this new home with my children and I was using my crystals one day and I picked it up and it broke in half. And it really affected me. And I believe the reason it affected me was I remembered when I bought it and probably why I bought this crystal. And it was actually signifying the breakup of my marriage. That actually the documents, the solicitor's documents, the financial agreement for the divorce had been settled. And just after that, this crystal broke. So quite a significant landmark, if you like, in my life in a way. Now what I decided to do, I did feel sad about it, but I loved the crystal and I took the second piece that had broken off because originally it was quite a long point of quartz, Lemurian quartz, and I took the lower piece and I decided to put it in my garden with some other crystals and I arranged them in a grid with some flowers in my rockery in my garden. And to this day, it is still there. I've actually moved on from that house, but it is happy. And I love this crystal just as much, even though it is broken and it has a fresh kind of breakage surface there that you can see. But I love this crystal just as much. So that is an example of how you need to notice if the breakage has really touched you deeply on a certain level. Is it symbolic of something in your life? Now, moving on from there, I have a real resonance with Apophyllite. I love Apophyllite crystals. So I bought this Apophyllite flower. It has a dark central kind of piece in the middle and then these beautiful formations around it. And it has this lovely piece of stilbite, which is this peachy pink crystal that is actually growing out of the Apophyllite, and they often grow together. And that was one of the main reasons I bought this piece. I just really loved that piece of stilbite and the shape. Now the stilbite has come away, and this again happened a few years ago, and I was disappointed, but actually I've kept the stilbite and I just place it back where it did break off. And when I'm sometimes dusting and cleaning the surface where this crystal normally sits, yes, it falls back off, but I just pop it back. And you know, maybe the stilbite quite enjoys being its own individual piece sometimes. So that's an example of where it's fine. I still live with this piece. I still love this piece. It hasn't changed it energetically for me. It's still a unique, beautiful piece of crystal. Now with my pendulums, I've had 2 pendulums that have broken. So my very first pendulum that I purchased was this macabre quartz pendulum, which I love to bits. And actually the chain is a bracelet that was given to me by my ex-husband again, interestingly enough. He wasn't into crystals at all, but he bought it for me, and it's got very, very small diamonds all the way set into the centre of these chain links. And it happened to have a little clasp, which meant that I could just easily loop it onto this macabre crystal, quartz crystal pendulum. Now, diamond acts as a transmitter and a magnifier of energy, so actually it means that this pendulum for me really responds to me, and it really works with me. It's starting to try and move now as I'm talking, so it's really a favourite piece of mine. But again, one day I picked it up and there is a chip in one of the pyramids of the macabre, and so yes, I was disappointed, but it's still just a wonderful pendulum, and it responds to me in just the same way. You know, when I say crystals aren't affected energetically by breakages, I suspect probably their energy blueprint is slightly different, but maybe that's the crystal's way of actually evolving itself, because light will refract differently through this crystal because of that breakage, and through this one because the stilbite has come away. But that's fine too. We as humans, we evolve and we change in our lives, so why shouldn't crystals? And then the final piece to show you is another pendulum, which was quite a special pendulum I found in a shop, and it's got cavinsite in the top, which is really beautiful. Actually, this piece is a very turquoise cavinsite. Normally it's a deeper blue in colour, with quartz at the end. But again, I picked it up one day to use it, and the cavinsite fell off because it used to be quite a round spherical piece in the top. There's only a tiny bit left, as you can probably see there, only a little bit left. And it was a shame because the cavinsite was a lovely sphere. It fitted really well in this circle of silver at the top. But again, I have actually kept that broken piece of cavinsite, and behind me you can see that I've actually placed it within a nest of celestite. So this celestite was given to me by a friend, and I've actually put the cavinsite, just placed the little pieces inside there. So they're friends, so it's quite nice. So I think be imaginative with your crystals, be forgiving of your crystals, and accept when they have their little breakages, because it really is a personal thing whether this affects you on an energetic, emotional level, or whether it has happened purely as a practical thing in your life. So, of course, like with my Lemurian crystal, that did remind me of a phase that I was going through or had been through with my ex-husband in my life. So sometimes when crystals break or you lose them, I think it is very useful to reflect on a few questions. So I'd encourage you to think, how whole do you feel in your life if a crystal breaks? How whole do you feel? Are you feeling fragmented in your energy if a crystal breaks? Is that a representation of fragmentation in your own life, in your own energetic body, your aura, your chakras, your energy system? Are you feeling broken at all? So that could be in relation to your heart. Is your heart broken? Did your crystal break because inside you feel broken? And finally, have you lost a piece of yourself? So sometimes we talk about soul retrieval, and pieces of our soul that we've lost through experiences in life. Maybe a crystal is representing a piece of your soul that you need to retrieve back, but that has been lost and it's disappeared and you need to find it again. So those are quite interesting questions to reflect upon. So going back to the beginning, we've talked about breakages with crystals. And of course, one of the ways they can break is if you drop them. So if you're holding one from a height and you drop it. The other thing to think about here with falling crystals is that the crystal is going from a height to a lower position, probably the floor. So that actually can represent a drop in energy. So I'd really encourage you as well to reflect upon, if you do drop a crystal from a height, is that in any way representing your own energy in your life, going from a higher state of energy to a lower state of energy? Now, of course, as we know, we need both. We need to be grounded in energy, and also we like to elevate ourselves to the higher angelic realms of energy. So we need both. So what might be going on for you there if you have dropped a crystal from a height to a lower position? Have a little bit of a think about that. So it could be that you're going through a transition in your life and your energies are in fact changing. The last thing to say is that crystals will sometimes disappear. I have had my favourite labradorite pendant that I talked about in one of my previous videos. It actually has a large oval piece in the centre and then 2 or 3 pieces dropping down with silver links, and the end piece fell out. And yes, I was upset because I love this pendant so much and used to wear it a lot. But in fact, what was interesting, I had a pair of drop-shaped labradorite earrings and I had a spare one. So what I ended up doing was taking the labradorite from that earring that was spare and putting it into the pendant, and actually it fitted perfectly. So isn't that interesting? I think my labradorite needed a break. Because let's remember, our crystals are hoovering up our energies and balancing our energies all of the time, and it can be quite tiring for them. And often they need to return to earth to be nourished and rejuvenated. And if we don't look after our crystals well enough, and we don't cleanse them often enough, and we don't listen to when they need to be cleansed, then they may well disappear of their own accord because they really need to have time out. So I think that's what happened with my labradorite pendant. It was right at the beginning of my crystal journey when I was not yet qualified in crystal therapy, and I was literally wearing crystal jewellery for my own benefit and healing. So maybe I just hadn't cleansed it quite enough. So have a little bit of a think about those 3 areas really. The breakages of crystals, and is it practical or is it energetic, and what might it mean for you? Has it fallen from a height to a lower level? What might that mean to you? And has it disappeared for a reason? Does it need some time out? Because those are all valid reasons, but essentially it means your crystals are still perfect in their own healing way. And all you need to do is listen, trust your intuition, witness what's happened, reflect on the questions I asked you. Are any of those relevant to you? And remember that crystals, we need to watch how crystals behave as well as honouring how wonderfully they heal us. So it's about their behaviour as well as their healing ability.